Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're cracking open some really old sources,
Yeah, we are.
trying to explore this, fundamental question. What actually helps us thrive? And maybe just as important, what holds us back?
Exactly. And the material we're diving into, it comes from some fascinating places, ancient texts, commentaries, specifically linked to the Dhammapadehakatha.
Right.
These are basically the stories, the explanations that flesh out the core wisdom teaching.
They give the context, yeah. The
Yes.
how and why behind verses you might have heard.
Mm-hmm.
And our mission really is to unpack one specific story from these texts. It gives this powerful, maybe kind of surprising take on what winning really means.
And the interesting thing is, the whole question gets kicked off by someone you wouldn't necessarily expect, a Brahmin who's a gambler.
A gambler, right.
Right.
It signals straight away this isn't just going to be some dry academic thing.
Definitely not.
Okay, so let's set the scene a bit. The story, it takes place in the Jetavana monastery. Pretty standard setting for these talks.
That's right. Classic location. And this Brahmin character, he approaches the teacher there.
Mm-hmm.
And the text actually gives his name, which is quite something. Anatthapucchakabrāhmaṇavatthu.
Whoa, say that again?
Anatthapucchakabrāhmaṇavatthu. It literally means the Brahmin who asks about what is not beneficial.
What a name. So he's specifically tuned into the downsides, the stuff that doesn't work.
Seems like it. And that's exactly what he asks the teacher. Does the teacher only know what's beneficial to Atta, or does he also get the flip side? Yeah, the stuff that's not beneficial. It seems like the Brahmin kind of assumes, maybe, that a spiritual teacher would just focus on the positive.
That makes sense. A common assumption, probably. So how does the teacher answer him?
Oh, very directly.
Mm-hmm.
I know both Brahmin, what helps and what doesn't.
Okay, clear enough. And what does the Brahmana want to hear more about then?
He wants the anatta. He specifically says, tell me about what is not beneficial.
Okay, so he wants the list. This is where the teacher kind of lays out these behaviors, these states that, according to the sources, really trip us up.
Yep, it's presented in verse.
Mm-hmm.
And the list includes things like sleeping too late,
Okay.
laziness,
Uh-huh.
being ill-tempered or fierce,
Right.
excessive sleepiness, general sloth.
Mm-hmm.
And then two more interesting ones. Rigidly following only your own view or faith, like going it alone without considering others.
Okay.
And also associating with other people's partners.
Wow. That's quite a list. Some seem pretty universal, like, laziness, bad temper, we all get that.
Sure.
But others, like being rigid in your views or the relationship one, they feel very specific to how we interact, how we connect, or maybe disconnect.
Exactly. It's not just about not getting stuff done.
Right.
Think about them as, obstacles.
Yeah.
Things that create friction, maybe dissatisfaction, or pull you off a clearer path. Sleeping late, sloth. That's about energy, effort. Ill temper, obviously,
Right.
creates conflict inside and out. Sticking rigidly to your way, that closes you off, doesn't it?
Yeah. Stops you learning.
And improper relationships, they cause suffering all around. They're presented as things that genuinely hinder flourishing.
So, direct obstacles. How did the Brahmin take this? Hearing this list of, unhelpful things.
The text says he was seriously impressed, really struck by it.
Okay.
He praised the teacher, saying basically, wow, you really do know both sides, the good and the bad, like nobody else.
So he got his answer about Anatha, and he's clearly thinking about it, which
Yeah.
must have, I guess, given the teacher some insight into this guy's own life.
Seems that way.
Because the conversation takes a turn then, doesn't it? The teacher asks the Brahmin about himself.
That's right. The teacher just asks him straight up, so how do you make your living?
And the big reveal.
The Brahmin says, pretty plainly, by gambling, good Gautama.
Ugh, there it is, the gambler. It suddenly makes sense why he might be so interested in things that are not beneficial, right?
Totally.
He lives in that world.
Yeah.
Constant ups and downs, winning, losing.
Exactly. And the teacher's next question is the natural follow-up. Well, do you win or do you lose?
And the Brahmin's honest answer?
Both happen.
Yeah.
Sometimes you win, sometimes you lose. That's gambling for you. Inherently unpredictable.
Right. And this moment, this honest answer, it's like the perfect setup for the core teaching here. This really powerful contrast the teacher draws.
Yeah, he takes the Brahmin's whole world winning and losing against others and kind of flips it.
How so? What's the contrast he makes?
Well, the teacher basically says, look, that kind of victory, winning against other people, whether it's gambling or, business, maybe even war, he calls it small or trifling. The word is appamatako. And he states really clearly, It is not superior, naseo.
Not superior. Wow, I mean, that cuts right against how we often think about success, doesn't it? Winning against the competition is usually seen as, like, the ultimate goal.
Totally goes against the grain.
So if that's not the superior win, what is? What's the alternative the teacher presents?
The truly superior victory, seo, he explains, is the one you get by winning against yourself.
Against yourself.
Specifically, by conquering your own inner defilements. The texts call them kilesa.
Kilesa. Okay, that sounds important. What exactly are we talking about there? What are kilesa?
You can think of them as like the mental static, the emotional muck within us.
Okay.
Things like greed, wanting more and more, anger, irritation, delusion, not seeing things clearly, jealousy, pride, restlessness, all that internal noise.
Right, the stuff that clouds your judgment or makes you act out.
Exactly. Those are the things that cause suffering, ultimately. So winning against yourself means mastering those inner forces.
So it shifts the whole game from external competition to internal mastery.
Precisely. And the sources, they use these really potent verses to drive this home.
What do the verses say about this self-conquest?
They state it really forcefully. Winning over oneself is truly superior, compared to winning over other people.
Doesn't matter if the external win is cash from gambling or loads of wealth or even winning a battle.
Nope. The internal victory, mastering yourself, that's ranked higher.
Okay, but why? Why is winning against your own greed or anger considered so much better, so much more superior than winning $1 million or defeating an enemy?
This is where it gets really deep. The sources explain why. For someone who has actually done this, who has mastered themselves, the text uses phrases like self-controlled, atadantasa, without stain, or blemish, anagatasa, someone whose conduct, body, speech, mind, is always restrained. Okay, someone who's really got their act together internally.
Exactly. For that person, the victory they've achieved, it cannot be undone. It can't be turned back into defeat. Cannot be undone. By what? Or by whom?
This is the amazing part. The verses list all sorts of powerful beings. They say this inner victory can't be overturned by a deva, like a god.
Okay.
Nor by a ganhaba, a kind of celestial musician or being, nor by Mara.
Mara, right, the tempter figure.
The embodiment of, temptation, obstacles to waking up. Not even by Mara. And not even by Brahma, like a high celestial deity.
Wow. So not gods, not celestial beings, not the ultimate tempter, not even the highest divinity they conceived of. Why list those specifically? What's the point?
I think it underscores just how absolute and internal this victory is. Devas and Brahmas might represent, immense power or heavenly pleasures, things people strive for externally. Ganhava may be sense pleasures.
Right.
And Mara represents those deep internal pulls, craving, aversion, delusion, the psychological forces that usually drag us back down.
I see.
So, by saying none of these can undo the victory, it means it's invulnerable. It's not dependent on external circumstances changing or even on resisting some future temptation. The inner condition itself has been transformed.
It's a win that nothing and no one can steal because the change is inside you. It's not like winning money you could lose tomorrow or a battle where you could be defeated later.
That's it exactly. You've become invulnerable not by building bigger walls, but by getting rid of the inner weaknesses, the kilesa, that external things could exploit.
That's quite a teaching, especially coming from a conversation that started with a gambler asking about what doesn't work.
It's a brilliant pivot, isn't it?
Yeah, and the sources say this teaching had a real impact, right, on the people who were there listening.
They do. The texts mention that at the end of this talk, many people in the audience had major breakthroughs. They attained spiritual fruits, like the first stage of awakening, stream entry.
So it wasn't just like an interesting idea. It actually landed and shifted something for people.
Suggested hit home pretty hard. It offered a genuinely transformative perspective.
So just to recap, we start with this Brahmin worried about the anatha, the unbeneficial things. He lists them out: laziness, anger, clinging to views.
Right.
Then we find out he's a gambler, living this life of external wins and losses. And that becomes the very basis for this profound teaching. Forget the small win of beating others. The real prize, the unshakable superior victory, is conquering yourself, your own inner kilesa.
It completely reframes strength, success, what's actually worth striving for.
Yeah.
True power is self-mastery. True success is the kind of inner peace that comes from that. It can't be taken away.
It really does give you something to chew on. And maybe, based on this deep dive today, here's a thought for you listening to take away. Where in your own life do you find yourself putting your energy when it comes to winning? Is it mostly focused on, external achievements, competing, getting ahead of others, controlling circumstances? Or is some of that energy going into that tougher, maybe less visible work of mastering your own internal world, your reactions, impulses, the kilesa?
Yeah.
Just thinking about that balance, what kind of victory honestly feels like it would bring the most lasting, unshakable sense of well-being for you?